What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the Brewtally Speaking Podcast, the official podcast of MetalNexus.net, where you can get all your show reviews, concert photos, latest going-ons in the rock and metal world. And with me, as always, is Daniel Terry. How are you doing this evening?
Oh, man, I'm doing pretty good. It's one of those weird seasons right now here in Missouri where it can't decide what season it actually is outside. Is it winter? Is it spring? Is it middle of the summer? You don't know, and sometimes you don't know like throughout the course of a single day.
Sounds like Michigan as well.
Yeah, they're just us temperate
Midwesterners.
Yeah, man. Like you really kind of never know. Life's like rolling some dice, man.
Or die? Is that the pluralization of it?
I guess so.
It's what it makes you want to do. That's what we're talking about.
It does, man. My sinuses are like, dude, what is going on?
Yeah. This episode's guest, speaking of, there's really no great fucking segue for that, so. This episode's guest is Frank Fanelli. He returns. He is actually back now with The World We Knew. They are reuniting, playing 2 shows out in New York. First show is on December 6th. With Dr. Acula reuniting after a while.
I was going to say, I didn't know those guys were still around.
No, they're reuniting. Bella Kiss, Last Perfection, Without Remorse, and I think there's a few others. Oh, nope, that's it. And day 2 on December 7th, which is a Saturday, is Dr. Acula as well, the OG lineup, Bella Kiss. We got Roseblood and Iscariot. I don't think that's
Iscariot.
Sure, well, that sounds about right.
All right.
So that'll be really cool. Unbeknownst to Frank, Bridget and I are going to New York to go see that Saturday show.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, we looked it up, and I was like, I mean, this sounds really stupid, but it was like, well, I mean, tickets are really cheap, and it's on a Saturday, so I mean, like, probably go to that show.
I was just going to sit in my front lawn in my underpants, but, I mean, there's a show.
Well, I mean, Bridget and I have traveled very far to go see friends' bands play and reunite. Like, we went to Rhode Island on a random trip after going to Denver to go see the Que Sera guys in Providence, Rhode Island, do their farewell show. We've gone all over to see a lot of bands. So, I mean, it's funny. It's one of those, like, I saw the other day that Poison the Well is doing the Opposite of December show out in LA, and I was like, oh man, that'd be really cool. And then I was like, oh, but the tickets and the cost of the show and all that.
Yeah, you could have seen Poison the Well play Opposite of December back when it came out for like $10, and there was probably like a bunch of other amazing bands out on the bill.
Yeah, I mean, maybe there will be on this one. I mean, My Chemical Romance is they're basically bringing Jersey to LA, but with Thursday opening up, but still. No, I'm kind of excited. I've never been to New York, so I know we're only going to be there for a hot minute. Basically, we're getting in the day of the show that Frank's playing on that Saturday, December 7th. I don't really know what we're doing leading up to the show, and like I said, I haven't told Frank, which has been really hard. I've actually seen him a couple of times, and I was just like, I almost slipped when I saw him when he was on the Rancid Pennywise tour, that we were talking about the show, and I was like, oh, how's the show been doing, like ticket sales wise? And he's like, oh, it's about half sold out and blah blah blah. And I was like, oh, and I started to say something, and then I was like, and I had to like backtrack real quick because I was like, oh yeah, you don't know that we're coming. So it's been really hard not to post anything about like, hey, friends who have been to this area of New York, what the fuck is there to do?
Right.
Because it'll be pretty obvious that we're coming to the show. But I figure at this point this is coming out right before the show, the week of the show, I believe, if my timeline is correct. So Frank can know at that point that we're coming to the show. Maybe we'll get that VIP preferential treatment. What is the furthest you've ever traveled for a show?
Well, that's a hard one. I guess the big question is, could it be a show that I played? Or
Sure.
Does it have to be just as a fan?
Do both. We'll each do both.
Okay. All right. Well, I would say as far as California.
Okay.
To not get paid any money. I don't remember the name of the town, and I don't care to remember. But in most recent memory, let's see. I went and saw Opeth in Chicago, which wasn't that far from St. Louis, like maybe 3 hours, 4 hours. I drove to Indianapolis last year to see Zayo, which was about 4 hours. And then I drove down to Nashville to see Zayo 3 months before that. You can see a common theme here. That was like a 5.5 hour drive. I've only driven. I've never bought plane tickets to go see a band.
Let's see. I have the furthest I went when I played in a band. We drove 10.5 hours to Greenbrier, Tennessee, to play in front of 5 people and get paid $15.
Okay, so you've got the same story I do. Okay.
Yeah, I don't know if I've ever told the story on the podcast. So yeah, we ended up going and playing that show. I know I've told this part of the story where the place didn't have 30 packs of beer. They didn't know what that was. Some hick kid was like, as soon as we get out of the van, or not even out of the van, our van broke down, so we took our singer's Ford Escape, 5 of us. And a rented U-Haul trailer. But we get out of this van, or out of this Ford Escape, and basically this kid, think of the No Regrets kid from whatever the Meet the Johnsons movie.
Oh boy.
And this kid, we get out and he's like, "Are y'all Enormosaurus? Are y'all from Michigan? Y'all like ICP?" And I was like, "Fuck, man, I didn't just drive 10.5 hours to have that be the first thing I've heard."
See, here's the deal, though. For me, where I live, that's every ICP fan where I live. So when people are like, "Dan, why do you hate on ICP and their fans so much?" That's kind of why. What I didn't know is that there are plenty of totally upstanding, fine people that like ICP.
Oh, absolutely. But yeah, so we ended up playing the show. It was us, a band from Memphis that I don't remember that was pretty solid. And the said kid that greeted us when we got there basically was like, "Oh, we're opening for you guys. Me and some other dudes that work here decided to be a band earlier this week." And
okay.
When I say they were a band, I meant that it was 3 people. I think it was a drummer. The kid was the vocalist, and the other person was the vocalist, but the other kid was too scared to look at anybody, so he had his back to us. And they had, since it was rap stuff, they had a ton of backing track things for the beats and so forth, but they didn't know how to use the machine, so it just kept playing this weird crickety type noise that they didn't know how to turn off, so it just kept going. It was terrible. But it's that thing where it's so bad that it becomes amazing that you're like, I can't believe this exists. And one of the dudes in the band was black, so that's integral, because they had quote unquote merch where they just bought Walmart starters mesh shorts and a generic t-shirt, and they spray painted with letters on it or whatever, and I don't remember the exact thing it said, but it was something to the effect of Greenbrier N-word something or other, I was like, whoa, I need that. So they were just I asked "Oh, are you guys selling that?" And they're like, "No, you can have it." And I was like, all right, yeah, I need, no one's gonna believe me. So I need something to prove.
I gotta remember this.
Yeah. And then so the quote unquote promoter of the coffee house was like, "Well, you guys stole their merch, so I'm not paying you." And we're like, "Dude, you owe us $100." And he's like, no one came, and you stole that other band's merch. I go, "It had the N-word spray painted on it, and they're white with one black dude. I don't think and that's not even merch. They gave it to me. It didn't have it for sale. Yeah, it wasn't even for sale. It just was they had it out." I don't know. I was like,
you stole it from us.
Yeah, it was a very weird experience. As far as the furthest I've ever traveled for a band, I would definitely say probably California as well. We went to go see 18 Visions when they did those small run of sort of reunion shows out that way in support of the last record. Yeah, I would say that was the furthest I've gone. Although when I went to Seattle to go see a friend of mine, coincidentally, I make tons of friends that are all in the music industry and such, and I saw that one of my friends happened to be in Portland, and I was like, "Yo, dude, what are you doing here? Let's fucking hang out." He goes, "Oh, I'm on this Prong tour. Do you guys want to come to the show? Prong goes on in about 35 minutes." And I was like, "Well, I mean, I'm here with friends. It's not just me and my wife." And he goes, "So there's 4 of you? What's the problem? Come on out." And then so we had only been in Portland for maybe 30 minutes, and I was like, "Hey, you guys want to go to this show for free?" And then they're everyone's like, "Of course you know someone here after you've never ever been in Portland." And I was like, "Whatever, it's a free show. It's Prong. Fuck you guys."
Right.
So
that's hilarious.
I've seen plenty of bands from all over, but I'm very excited to go back to the East Coast and listen to a lot of East Coast metal in a couple of weeks.
And you may or may not have had an interview with somebody from Prong.
Yeah, I might have turned around and made Tommy Victor of Prong a fan of this podcast. But I mean, You'll have to stay tuned for that to figure that out.
Yep.
And speaking of staying tuned, let's get into my conversation with Frank Fanelli, and we will talk to you afterwards. So the pleasure this early afternoon of talking to Frank Fanelli, formerly and now currently again, vocalist for The World We Knew. No, I always want to make it a past tense thing because of the fact that they didn't exist for a while. But here we are. You are bringing the band back. I think if everything is correct on social media, 2020 is when we can expect to hear some new music, right?
New music? Maybe before that.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm not going to say we're deep into it yet. We're not super deep into it, but we'll probably try to release something before we do our comeback shows, which is still to be announced, but it's before the end of this year.
Shows, as in more than one, it sounds like.
Maybe.
Well, I didn't know if, because sometimes, I know from some of my friends' bands that have kind of gone away and they do reunion shows and so forth. Sometimes they'll end up doing kind of like an earlier show, because sometimes, some of us are old now, we got kids and can't make it out as late, and they try to, do like a matinee show, and then they'll do kind of another one a couple hours later, or, in another town. And I don't know if that's a great idea to try to get as much done in one day as you can, or if it's very ambitious but just not very practical from a load up, setup, and teardown perspective.
I've done that once, where we played 2 shows in back-to-back in like one day, and it was horrible. It hurt. It hurt so bad. Everything hurt so much worse than what it usually does after just one show. And that was when I was playing full-time. So I can't even imagine what I would feel like now if I tried to play 2 shows in one day. I think I'd probably die.
You don't think all your years of being on the road and helping, do setups and all that kind of stuff with your crew, you wouldn't be more professional in the setup and all that and the execution of it?
Professional and getting older are 2 different things.
I don't know. I like to think that they're the same. They go hand in hand.
My body doesn't work in my 30s as well as it did when I was in my early 20s.
It's funny because, kind of speaking to, I kind of wanted to hit on, obviously, it's been quite a while, probably since you've done shows in that regard or even really played. I know you did a couple, I'm thinking outside of the New England Metal Fest. I think you've only done like maybe 3 shows with, man, I'm just totally blanking, with, what the fuck?
You got this.
Yeah.
Are we talking about the other band that I was in?
Yeah, no, Oath. I was thinking of Oath.
Yeah, okay.
Well, because in my head I kept thinking of Oathbreaker, and I was like, nope, it's not Oathbreaker. It's something else, and the logo is like a nice hammer on the thing, and I was like, I can see it. I can see the album. It's sitting in Bridget's car still. What the fuck is it called? Oh, yeah, Oath. There it is.
Yeah, Oath was cool. I just got extremely busy with just tour managing and getting better jobs in that regard. But to answer your question, I think we did a bunch of festivals, but we didn't do too many small club shows. I think that was your question. I don't even know.
Yeah, no, it was just basically, the fact that you haven't really even played shows in general as of late. Just
yeah.
That are you in show shape to do some of these things? You think like what is you're 30 now, and it's been a little while since you maybe have played some of these songs and so forth. Just kind of I was thinking about, have you thought about what it's going to feel like playing some of these songs that you wrote when you were, how a youth? Yeah,
I've grown accustomed to going to the gym recently, which is nice. My roommate's training to be a personal trainer or something along those lines. So she doesn't force me. I very much go with her because I want to. And this was before the comeback was even like a thing. So I feel pretty good. I do a little bit of cardio here and there, but I'll probably ramp it up like once we start announcing like when the comeback shows are. But yeah, I mean, I haven't played. So we recorded a couple of songs, like demoed out some songs like 2 weeks ago for the first time. And that was the first time I picked up a microphone in 3 years, almost to the day. And I wasn't playing show, of course, but everything definitely felt different. It's kind of like riding a bike, but the bike had like a flat tire. So it was, everything like when I got into the groove, everything sounded good and I felt good. And I was very pleased with my results. But, the first like 20 minutes I was there, I was like, oh man, this is not good. It's a lot of muscle memory, and I'm looking forward to doing it again. It's tough. It's going to be tough because it's not like we're going to do a comeback show and play 20-minute set. It's going to be an hour-long set or more, whatever it may be. So we'll see how it goes. I'm training for it in different ways, and then once I actually sit down with the band and practice, that'll be a whole nother ballgame.
Something that's been kind of interesting about this whole thing really is, how very behind the scenes everything, I think you were probably doing that a lot of us weren't aware of. That's, just getting your masters back, getting everything ready to be launched, all at one time on on, streaming services and so forth. What was that process like, and what really made you want to kind of take on that task and those responsibilities all these years later?
I knew that there's still kids all over the place, that fans, I'm not going to call them kids, they're probably older now. There was a lot of fans that always hit me up and asked me, the CD you're talking about is To the Wolves. We released that in 2009 on Stillborn Records, which is Josta's label from Hatebreed. They always asked me like where it was online, because you couldn't find it. It wasn't on Spotify. It wasn't on iTunes. It wasn't on Amazon Music or any of that shit. So after just a while of them asking me, because I'm not listening to my own music very often, at least especially when I wasn't trying to do the What We Knew anymore, it just bombarded me with the question. I was like, after a while, I just was like, what the fuck is that all about? Like, why isn't it here? Or why isn't it there? Why can't you find it? So I hit up Jamie and I just asked, and whatever, he had his own thing. That's why they took it down, or Stillborn, went away, whatever it was. But basically, I just got sick of hearing. And when you're proud or something like that, you want it to be accessible to whoever wants to listen to it. And I took matters in my own hands. I talked to the right people, and we got the ability to do it again. So I wanted to do it on the exact day it was released 10 years ago, which was June 30th, 2009. And I achieved that. I talked to Tom, who was one of the original guitar players before Tim was even involved. And we just, discussed maybe doing this again, maybe just doing a 10-year reunion show, or not a 10-year reunion, 10-year anniversary of that record. And then we were like, well, this is actually the 15th year the band has been in existence. So do you want to just do something for fun? And then, it kind of snowballed from there.
The thing that's kind of interesting about this to me, in our first chat we did, God, it's been almost 3 years, I think, since I've done that one. I could probably
Seriously?
I probably could pull up the date on iTunes actually, but I don't know if that actually will give me the real date that it came out, or the date that I started importing everything over to iTunes and so forth.
That's so long ago.
I know I've been doing this podcast for just about 3 years. I started it in like October-ish or so of 2017. So let me see. Let's see what iTunes will tell me. December 6th of 2016 is when I posted our chat.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, that's funny.
So, something
I didn't realize it was that long.
Yeah. So the interesting thing about that to me is I kind of was thinking about our chat a while ago, just how, real and open you kind of got. And I think at that point, you were really in I'm not going to say the beginning phases of your tour managing career or anything like that, but I definitely think it was when it was starting to take, you're starting to get a lot bigger gigs more consistently and becoming more busier in that realm. And listening to you kind of talk about the band and kind of the sense of like, I just kind of realized like I couldn't I couldn't do the band anymore. It was this thing I really, literally went all in on. Like, I believe so much in myself and this band, and these are the things that I went through to make that happen, you know, like leaving school and all that kind of stuff. And there seemed to be a little bit of, from my perspective, a little bit of a bitterness or resentment, you know, that you see other people that were maybe not as good or not as willing to do the things that they needed to do, but had more opportunities than you as far as the band thing goes. And so I kind of, you know, wondering now, in that 3-year change, or in that 3-year period where, you know, from then to now, has your perspective on any of that kind of changed at all?
That's a good question. My priorities were the last time we spoke in this capacity, my priorities were very, very in line with just building my career as a tour manager or doing merch or professionally and all that, you know, behind the scenes kind of stuff. Because yes, it did take off pretty well after The World We Knew ended in 2013. And I was very bitter about it because, you know, it's still all I ever wanted to do. And 3 years ago, it's still when I was trying to play in Oath and do that, not full time necessarily, but, you know, we were trying to do things as a band that could potentially, I'm not going to say make it, but you know what I mean? Make it again, do the damn thing. So now 3 years after that conversation, I have deep rooted, you know, jealousy issues with certain things from the past, but I don't look at it that way anymore because I'm not trying to do this as my number one anymore. I'm pretty realistic about it. There's definitely a select group of fans that are like extremely excited that this is happening, but I know that six years in the music industry is like it's like we're practically starting from scratch again, but with a fan base that's there, but they're older, and you know, it's the young people that really spread the word about shit. So now it's like it's starting all over again. But I know that this isn't going to be some huge wake up call, like, oh shit, I have to change my life again. I have to do this, and we have to tour, and we have to do this and that. So I'm not super bitter about what happened, as far as just us working really hard and not getting to the point where I thought we deserved to be, because the music industry doesn't owe us anything. The people that run the music industry don't owe us anything. Do I think we should have maybe had a couple opportunities? Yeah. But doing what I've done for the past 6 years since this band has been gone, and that's with working with some of the managers that, I'm not going to say screwed us over because nobody screwed us over, but working with some of the managers that worked for us back in the day, or the agents or whatever. Now doing what I do in the tour management world and dealing with different managers and agents and seeing the grand scheme of things for other bands, I understand the reasoning why certain things didn't work out the way they did for our band. And I just see it from a different light now. And that has helped me grow different relationships with different people that I didn't have when the band was around. And it's pretty cool because now I might be able to take it to different heights in different ways just from understanding what we did wrong in the past, if that makes any sense.
No, it totally does. And that's actually something I kind of wanted to hit on is, given the fact of what you've done and the connections you've made throughout the industry, the music industry as a whole, between, you know, various promoters, various managers, publicists, and so forth that you have to deal with, you know, your day in and day out now for what you do. If it's made you think about, when starting to want to do this again with The World We Knew, if it was thinking about it more tactically and kind of looking at it more as a, I don't necessarily want to say a financial plan, but more of a thought out plan as a whole, like a business plan of, this is what needs to happen. These things need to fall into place first. Then we'll kind of see where it goes. If there's interest and there's these other things that fall into place, then, you know, we'll keep kind of going from there. And you're looking at it more logically as opposed to more emotionally.
Yeah. This is all I ever had from 2004 to 2013. There was no backup plan. There was no nothing. It was like, if this fails, I don't know what the fuck I'm doing. And now it's just not like that. Now, I'm not like, we haven't announced who's in the band yet or anything like that, but myself and one of our original guitar players is in the band. We sat down and it was basically like, well, we both have careers now. We can absolutely afford to do this. Not full time. Well, yeah, I guess we could full time, but that'll dwindle down when you're not really making money the way you should.
Yeah, no, exactly.
But it's like we can absolutely afford to do this. If we want to do a tour, we could fucking rent a van that's not going to break down on us 14 times in a row. You know what I mean? Like that shit that we didn't have. That shit we didn't have access to even 6 years ago, or beyond, or before that. So we just sat down and said, this is the way we should do it if we want to do it again. And everything is it's a whole different game plan. It's a whole different game plan than it was when we were thinking about writing a fourth record back before we broke up. We pitched some things to different labels or managers, whatever, and it didn't work out. And going back to our 10 minutes ago when I said I was bitter, I was super bitter because I thought songs were cool and this, that, the other thing. But now it's just like, I don't give a shit. I really don't. We're going to write some shit that we think is really sick. And if somebody wants to put it out, then awesome. If they don't, well, then cool. We'll reap the benefits of it from the people that want to buy it and stream it and whatever. And so be it. But it's just not our number one anymore. Everything is very, very strategically planned so far by ourselves. We're not bringing anybody outside in just yet. So until we demo some stuff out that's ready to be maybe shopped around or whatever, right now we're keeping it just to ourselves and making some cool plans that will benefit us in 2020 when we decide to release a record.
So two things, and we've kind of touched on these things, but they kind of go hand in hand, but they kind of go in completely different directions as far as a question goes, potentially. So obviously when you started the band, you were young, you were like high school aged, and now you're 30 with a career, and you have not done a band thing in writing capacity, probably in a couple of years at least. So when you kind of were listening probably to, and Out Came the Wolves record, probably just in preparation for sorry, not Out Came the Wolves. Yeah, that was Rancid.
I wish we wrote that record.
Sorry, I'm going, I still have my iTunes shit popped up, and that's one of the things on my iTunes playlist. So I was like, that's the problem I have with looking at shit, is I tend to read what I'm thinking as I'm talking. I'm like, yeah, that's close to what I was thinking. So this thing. So actually, I'm gonna put this down so I don't put up the A New Level podcast or any of the other podcasts that are also in my queue. But it's one of those things, thinking about that record and when you were probably writing it and so forth. And I know we had this conversation when you were initially writing Oath stuff too, where you kind of were making the same analogy about, it's kind of like riding a bike. It's kind of, activating a part of your brain that you haven't really used as much as you were. And so I'm kind of thinking, when you're listening back to that record, probably getting it prepped for everything, for a vinyl release and all this kind of other stuff, did you kind of look at it a little bit differently than maybe, or thinking about it differently than when you had kind of written all these things? And to the other side of it, as you're starting to write stuff for it, are you talking
about a new record?
Yeah, the demos that you're working on at this point.
Gotcha.
Have you... Does the band, or maybe the lyrical themes and ideas that you want to put across, are they kind of more in line with what you're thinking back then as a kid, or are you kind of interested to? Is it interesting to kind of see how far you've come as a person just in writing for what the band is? Because I always think that's interesting when you look at a band's discography, someone that's been around for a while, and kind of seeing the growth and progression of their writing, their vocabulary, their the things that they were going through and so forth. But sometimes there's still a theme. I think Atreyu is a great example. Everyone loves The Curse, but The Curse is kind of out of the rest of the discography, is really the outlier, because it's the only one that kind of talks about, the imagery that's used in it is kind of the only one that is used on that record. But I think Alex and Brandon have a very good sense of words and vocabulary and so forth, and melodies and all that kind of stuff, that there's kind of a theme across their whole discography if you really pay attention. I know you have a little bit more of a selected discography, but it does make me wonder if you've kind of noticed things that you were writing about consistently before, and if some of those are kind of present on what you began to write, or if you're like, wow, I've really grown as a songwriter and as a lyricist and all that kind of stuff, and that you're taking the band and yourself to a higher elevated level.
I've never stopped writing. It's a matter of, will I ever use these words? You know what I mean?
Okay.
So I had a full song in my head for, I don't even know how long. I had two to be exact, actually. Full written out lyrically and also musically. I just needed somebody to put them, put the music out and record it so I could then record my vocals over it. But I've had the same two songs in my head, I don't know how long, maybe since right after where we broke up, and I just never brought it to light. And both of them, one is very like a very nostalgic feel to it. Like, 'cause I have this weird, I don't know if it's an issue or whatever. I'm a very nostalgic person when it comes to just, getting older and then remembering like all of my firsts of whether it's in music or whether it's girls or growing up and doing things for the first time. I don't know what it is, but one's about that. And the most recent one I wrote about is basically how much of a failure I felt like towards the end of The World We Knew. So now that The World We Knew is back, it's kind of like a look into my head on how I felt towards the end of that era. And I'm hoping that the CD itself, this is, the whole CD is not written at all, but I'm hoping that I can write it to where I'm out of that funk, and now here we are blossoming into a new chapter of the life of this band. You know what I mean? I don't know if my ability to be a lyricist is growing or whatever, but if you look over just the 3 full lengths that we have, I mean, I've always felt like somewhat of an underdog, and this is probably not going to be any different, to be completely honest with you.
I think it's just interesting. I think the thing that's interesting about it to me is, whereas a lot of bands will have time to, it's that cliche, you put out a record, you tour it, you put out a record, you tour it. So there's a bit of consistency in that because you're constantly, for those kind of bands and so forth, you're able to kind of see like, oh, this song really worked, or this part of a song works really well in a live capacity, and so maybe you're thinking about some of the experiences and interactions you've had in that capacity to inform and kind of steer where a lyric or a melody or a song is going to go for the next thing. But you guys have had, I don't know if it's a luxury or if it's kind of a curse, the fact that you've had all this time off, to where it's either, I think, going to be the ability to kind of really hone in and perfect exactly what you want. And it's almost kind of like a first record. You have all the time in the world to write that first record because no one is expecting anything from you. And I'm wondering if it's kind of that same thing where all this time off has really allowed you to kind of put your best foot forward with what you're going to present to fans, long time and potentially new, which I think is also kind of another facet to this that's interesting. Is there's so many people that know you as, cat brand, cat clothing Frank, or Frank from tours and so forth, but they don't know this side of you. And that's something we had kind of touched on too in the first chat is, I definitely didn't know you as Frank from The World We Knew. I knew you as Frank, tour manager. And so it's interesting to kind of, I think about that perspective of self for you when doing this record, as well as that you're potentially going to be opening yourself to a whole new audience that doesn't really know you in this capacity.
Yeah, this is, when you say it's kind of like a first record again, it's absolutely like that. And it's kind of confusing. Just because I haven't had to feel that way in a long time, since 2007, technically. Well, I guess with Oath, but we, that's a whole different thing because we were a brand new band. With this, I'm telling you, I've absolutely paid attention to the trends or whatever over the years, especially since we broke up. And we've never been that way. We were never really a deathcore band. We were never like a,
metalcore, straight ahead.
No, yeah, I mean, we were a metalcore band. We've always been somewhat of a metalcore band, but I'm not trying to. fill any
Not trying to check
specific
the
mold
boxes.
or anything. Yeah, I'm not trying to fill any specific mold. I definitely know what works and what has worked in the past. So we're gonna stick to our same general feel, especially of the older stuff, like of Exordium time frame, because that's the guitar player that we're using. You know, Tom. He wrote the entire Exordium record, which is our first record. There's definitely going to be the same feel of the older style of War We Knew, but it doesn't mean that we're going to write the same kind of songs. I have a definite different mindset now than I did back then as far as lyrically and what fits where and why it fits and what's going to work in a live setting and why people are going to want to hear the song over and over again. That's very different than what it was back then. So I'm pretty excited to work with that. Plus, some of the other musicians that are in our band are just that. They're musicians from other bands. Some of them aren't, some of them are, and they're bringing a whole new flavor to it. So it's a lot of different minds working together, which is something we haven't done in a very, very long time.
Something, you know, as we're kind of slowly winding down on this, because we don't need a 2-hour marathon like last time. You know, something I was kind of thinking about is, you know, you through doing the tour managing, and especially I think it was on the, I can't remember if the podcast that you were a part of technically with Josta, with the CKY dudes, I don't remember if that was that was Warped Tour. So they were on Warped Tour that year too. Okay. So trying to remember that, but I mean, like, you know, obviously in dealing with Josta, I know you've done some stuff for him as far as like, you know, road work, tour managing, merch, whatever, for the solo shows that he was doing. Obviously have ties to him from him putting out the record, and so forth. And I don't know how, like, the capacity of the dealings that you have had with him since you've kind of transitioned careers, but do you go to someone like him who is very has his hands in a lot of pots and kind of try to get his try to pick his brain a little bit as to how to maybe navigate this? Because, you know, obviously he does things with Josta and they aren't to the level of Hatebreed, but I feel like because of what he's doing with Josta, it's sort of very similar to what you would try to be doing with this at this point. Could be wrong, but I feel like that would be a good source of knowledge on how to best try to do this in this landscape of, you know, social media now being what it is, all these various platforms and all these kind of things, to be able to utilize someone that has worked with you before, but is also working on his own thing kind of at the same level to make it as successful as it can be. Are you utilizing those kind of relationships?
I actually don't want to work with anybody I've worked with before.
Okay.
And that's not a dig on them at all. It's just maybe we may, you know what, you know, it's funny I say that. Our first label owner actually printed all of our merch for
Holy Mountain.
One of my very, very, very good friends, his name is Danny. He owns Holy Mountain Printing, and I say I don't want to work with anybody I worked with in the past, but when I say that, I mean in a in like a label capacity or management or agent, whatever. I just want to start completely fresh in a way where everything is not new but fresh. I just want us to be fresh. I want to make different decisions. I want to make better decisions, just from all the knowledge that I've built up over the years of doing, or of just not being in a band, not being in a full-time band, not being in a band that needs to make, you know, excuse me, like rash decisions. It's just, I just want everything to be very, very fresh. I've only reached out to one person who I won't mention because nothing's a done deal or anything. So I've only reached out to one person for thoughts on the matter, and you know, we'll cross that bridge when we get there. But it's somebody that I've never worked with before, as far as behind the scenes goes. But we've toured together. We've been close for a while, and I value his opinion. So we'll cross the bridge when we get there. But I do not want to just fall into the same old routine that, I'm not going to say helped this band fail or whatever, because we didn't fail. It just didn't work the way we wanted it to over 9 years. I just want everything to be completely fresh. So we have a couple of different members. We have no timeline. We have nothing that is going to force us into making a weird, bad decision. So yeah.
What is the biggest difference in getting ready to do this now versus when you started? That has just really like been like, holy shit, I didn't realize this was going to be this hard, or maybe this easy potentially.
Letting people know that we're back again. I'm dead serious. I can't even believe how much more difficult it is now than it was even in 2013 when we were breaking up. It's so much harder to get the knowledge into people's heads that did know who we were, that, hey, we're going to do this again. Not, like I said, we're not releasing a record next week or anything, but I would like people to know that already knew who the hell we were, that we're back, you know what I mean? And that's going to take some time. But obviously social media is a huge piece of that. It's just completely different. It's a learning curve all over again. I'm going to have to probably get a PR person, which I didn't have to deal with because we had labels to do all that shit. So I think that's the number one most difficult thing now. And I definitely do not envy any new band trying to do this as a full gig. I don't envy what they have to go through to make sure they stand out in a specific way. I really don't.
Yeah, no, it's funny because I feel like with Cat Clothing and everything that you've done and the bands you work with and the things that you probably have to probably help facilitate. I mean, a big thing with touring that I'm seeing, and it's funny because people make fun of me when I go to shows and I know like the photographers, the tour photographers and so forth. And I'm like, oh, there's Matt Bender who's out with Rivals and Scott Stapp and, all these other fucking people. And people were like, how do you know the video guy? And I was like, I don't know. I know a lot of people who don't, aren't in the band, but are a huge integral part of making sure the show works and the tour is successful. There's so many people behind the scenes that, and I think you obviously are a major part of that. Like, I don't think people understand what a tour manager does, but it's a very integral part, and you kind of have to know a little bit of everything to make sure that it's being done correctly and that everything, aligns with getting the fucking show up and running. But I do think it's funny that that's an avenue now because of content being king for all these social media things, that a couple years ago that wasn't anything anyone was looking for. And now I don't know how many band people I see like, yo, who's a good concert photographer who can put together like a quick like sizzle reel of sorts to put out once a week for the tour so we can constantly keep our fans engaged and make them want to come out to shows and make them know that we're still here and present.
Yeah, that's why we put together, so I think the day was June 30th or July 1st. June 30th was the 10-year anniversary of To the Wolves. So I basically said that we were going to be putting it out on vinyl that day, which was now 2 months ago, maybe to the day, almost to the day. But July 1st, we put up that video that basically said it's a 60-second clip of just live clips of us from playing all over the world with kids going crazy. Obviously, you don't want it to be a boring video, but it's a 60-second clip of me just talking over it, saying what we're going to do here. And I could have just made a regular ass post that said, "Hey, we're back. We're going to do shit in 2020." But I wanted it to be interesting and cool to watch. And if you can't take 60 seconds out of your day to watch a video, I mean, you're crazy. But it's definitely interesting seeing how much different content is now, because I've already looked into even flying certain people to our comeback shows to make sure that it's documented correctly. That shit I never fucking cared about. Well, we didn't have the money to do that shit back then anyway, but I mean, it's one of those things where I want to preserve what we're doing now to the best of my ability. And I think I'm going to let go of a lot of responsibility now and let whatever team we bring in, let them make a couple of decisions that I wouldn't have let them make back then when this was all I had. Now I know a little bit more, and I think they know more than me as far as what's going to make a band grow when I shouldn't be the forefront of it, besides just being a fucking vocalist. Does that make any sense? Maybe.
Yep, it does. Last question. It seems like cat clothing has really kind of taken off as well since last time we talked. I know you were taking it in a different direction as far as the branding, I'll say, and it seems like that has worked tremendously for you. Obviously, getting even now, I think you're at, 2 actual retail locations at this point?
Not anymore.
Oh, okay.
we did some things that were probably a good idea, but we decided against them within the first 6 months or so. It just retail is really difficult, but retail is not necessarily difficult to make sales. That's not the hard part. I mean, yeah, of course, it's not easy, but that's not necessarily the hard part. It's keeping proper workers and things of that nature. So that's difficult. But basically, we're trying to pick the brains of the social aspect of it, the social media aspect of it. We have a lot of friends that do this thing a lot, or do that kind of thing full time, and it's still something I'm just not incredibly good at. So the online stuff is pretty difficult. But then we did Warped Tour again. We did a couple of music festivals this past year, and we're doing Riot Fest soon. We're doing Lost Rages. We're still doing the same mold. It's just one of those things where it's not my first priority, but thankfully it does have its ups when we're keeping busy. Right now I'm not incredibly busy with it. We're going to do a couple of fests before the year is over, but we'll really ramp it up again once. What the fuck's that holiday called? Thanksgiving.
I was going to say Black Friday?
Yeah.
And Cyber Monday and all that?
Yeah, we'll ramp it up again. But right now it's just we're going to get rid of some old stuff and we'll play the field a little bit and see what next year brings. We've been working on something with Amazon. We'll see what happens with that. I don't fucking know.
Absolute last question, other than having you plug socials and all that kind of stuff. Out of the various endeavors that you have now with a band, with the clothing brand and so forth, and your career doing tour managing and all that kind of stuff, which one has surprised you the most as far as the successfulness of it, given the fact that all 3 are seemingly impossible pipe dreams for a lot of people to achieve and have any kind of success in the first place?
I think that I've really surprised myself when it comes to working behind the scenes with bands as a tour manager or merchandiser or whatever. And the reason I say that is because I was more broke than I've ever been in my life when The World We Knew broke up. I could barely pay my bills. I was kind of homeless, but not on the streets homeless, just I'd stay with different friends and stuff like that. I just couldn't afford to do anything as an adult. And in 6 years, I'm not saying I'm fucking rich. That's not the case. It's just now I don't look at price tags on the food that I eat or the shirt that I'm going to buy, or if I need a computer, I'll buy a computer. It's one of those situations. I work. You can ask anybody who knows me, whether they're a friend or a peer or somebody in the music industry that knows just my work ethic. I don't stop. It's so rare that I stop. I'm always on the road, and it's because I want to build, not only a reputation for myself, but I just, when I'm dead and gone, I just want people to be like, oh yeah, he was in a band. That was cool. He did really well in the band, from an outside perspective, but also the kid, he just never stopped. He worked his ass off to do the thing that he wanted to do. I'm not trying to be rich. I'm not trying to buy fucking Lamborghinis. I'm not trying to live in a mansion. I just know that if I don't work now, when I'm able to do so as a 31-year-old, in the way I want to work as far as the music industry goes, is that there's no guarantees. I don't have a fucking pension. I don't have like health insurance. Like I need to make that money now and work my ass off and be the hardest working person in the room now, or else I'm going to suffer later on in my life and not be able to, buy diapers for so-and-so without working for, I call it the man, working for like the outside world. This is a schedule that I make for myself. I choose what tours are offered to me. I don't choose the exact tours that I want to do, because then I would be, on the biggest and best and this, that, the other thing. But I get to choose what I want to do, and I'm making good money doing it. But that's only because I've done it for so long and have a good reputation with the people that are giving me these jobs. It's not like I'm just fucking giving hand jobs left and right. You know what I mean? It's my roommate says I'm the best roommate ever because I'm literally never here.
Right.
This is the first time I've taken a month off. I took all of August off, and then now we're at the end of August. I'm about to leave with Pennywise next week. But this is the first time I've taken a month off in maybe years. And I just did 119 days in a row. And I say that kind of shit a lot. It's like, I've been doing this for this long and this long, whatever. I don't deserve anything extra. I want everybody to know later on when I'm dead and gone and be like, you should have worked hard because look at what that guy achieved. And I'm a fucking high school dropout. I had zero money to my name while I was still in the band. And in 6 years, it's not like I'm living some crazy materialistic life where it shows that I'm doing really well for myself, but I know that I don't have any issues right now, and I want to maintain that for as long as I possibly can before maybe something catastrophic happens. You never know. It's just life. You know what I mean? So if I can stay busy doing the things that I love to do, and then also add other things that I love to do on top of it, aka the World We Knew or Cat or whatever, then I'm achieving my goals. Simple as that.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for taking the time. Where can people find you online, and anything else you'd like to plug, and anything else? Yeah.
So I'll give you something that I think only me and my guitar player know right now. I got the rights back to Death Dealer yesterday. That's our third record. I don't know who was making money off of that for a very long time. But as of yesterday, I got the rights back to that. So by the time this comes out, if you ever buy Death Dealer again or stream it or whatever, that money goes directly to our band, which will help fund new record and all that fun stuff after that. So that's a good plug for you right there. And all the streaming platforms, iTunes, Amazon, Spotify, all that bullshit. You can, if you buy music, that's awesome. You're helping us a lot. Nobody knows that yet, which is cool. I think I didn't even announce that online yet. Yesterday was the 8th anniversary of that record, which is cool because I got the rights back on the 8th anniversary. So we're doing that. I just released the To the Wolves vinyl 2 months ago, and there's only 300 made on Earth. If they magically, sell out really quick or some shit like that, then maybe we'll do another, maybe in a different color or whatever. But right now there's 300 made on Earth. If you go to any of our socials, you can find that there. The socials are TWWK official on Instagram, and Facebook. You just type in The World We Knew. There's another band close with our name that was new. Don't follow that shit. Yeah, I mean, it's pretty simple. I'm Frank TWWK, I think everywhere. Catclothing.net for if you like cats and you want to help build my empire. And then if you ever see me somewhere on tour with, whether it's Andy Black and you're Pennywise or JID or whatever, I mean, feel free to come say, hey, I'm very approachable. I may not look it. I may look mad all the time. That's not the case. But I mean, I'm a pretty approachable guy. John, you know that. I'm not a total piece of shit.
No.
You buy me Shirley Temples whenever you see me. So
we buy you a cake for your birthday.
Oh, that was a good cake.
Yeah, thank you very much for taking the time. Like I said, it was kind of fitting. Like I wanted to have you back on, but I didn't necessarily know what the fuck to talk about. And like I said, it's I've been kind of very nostalgic myself with the podcast. We're approaching 3 years of me doing this, the transition I've gone through, and a rebranding of sorts of doing this, and just kind of, I mean, for fuck's sake, my last week has been talking to Doc Coyle again of Bad Wolves and the success that band has had.
Dude, it's crazy how much of a 180 that dude, and I don't know him personally, but he was in the same boat. His band, God forbid, was obviously a bigger band than the World We Knew was, but like, God forbid, died because, just times, that's just what happened. And now he's in a band that's doing a million times better than they've ever done. It's like, it's crazy how that shit works out. All you really need is one thing to work out. And I can't stress enough, this is, the World We Knew coming back is not, I'm telling you right now, we are not going to tour full time unless something fucking magical happens. We'll maybe tour a little bit here and there.
It'll probably be like Alexis on Fire is what I assume.
Yeah, we have no pressure whatsoever. This is 150% for fun right now. This is why we're doing this again. We can afford it. We got a bunch of really good fucking musicians to fill our backbone. And it's going to be so much fucking fun to do now without the pressure of needing it to succeed to survive like it was when we broke up. And that's the one message I want to get across to whoever's listening, or to fans that know us, or people that don't know who we are. This now is completely, we of course want it to succeed, but it's completely without pressure and for fun. So I hope that's going to shine through when we do this again.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to hearing it. I think it'll be interesting to see what the time away has done for the band and the message you're going to put out. And I mean, I think the message of this podcast still very much, and the people I associate with that have become friends because of this podcast, or anybody I know in the industry, has still always been just hard work will always shine through, and perseverance will always, is key. I mean, I don't get paid to do this fucking podcast. The amount of time I dump into it, doing emails and setting shit up and showing up to venues hours before anybody even gets there, all the time editing shit I didn't even know how to do, still probably don't know how to do correctly. Just the relationships I've been able to make and maintain and have, friends I've gotten because of it is shocking. All because of some stupid fucking thing I decided to do for fun. And it still is. And, like I said, you were my second guest that I've had on that, aired. And I, just thinking about, like your career, where it's gone, and the diversity that you've had on the tours you do and so forth, and, the rebrand of Cat and all that kind of stuff. There are a lot of parallels in thinking about it, as we're approaching 200 episodes of this podcast, which will be over 200 by the time you hear this. But it's just been interesting to kind of how, in a very minuscule way, how much what you've done and what I do have kind of paralleled. Like, it's like Cat was one thing initially, and I liked it when it was that, but it's interesting to see that you were like, this is only going to go so far, so let's kind of rebrand it because of the not rebrand, but kind of relaunch what it is and where we're going to take it, and see how much further and more successful it's going to be just by slightly shifting perspective. And you did that with the band thing. Like, the band thing didn't work, but instead of completely abandoning your dream job of working in the music industry and so forth, you shifted perspective and were offered an opportunity and realized that it would probably be more advantageous for you to still do that. And look at how far you've come now at this point. And so it's just, as a whole, I always enjoy kind of getting to talk to you in this capacity, because I feel like there's more to you than I think people realize, and something that I kind of was immediately drawn to about you as a person is just that tenacity to never give up on something. And a lot of it is a little bit fear-based initially, but I think even still, now that you've enjoyed some success financially, I'll say, that it hasn't shifted your drive and attitude to want to be the best you can be, and just the hustle. And I've always admired that about you, and it's something I admire about a lot of the people in the industry that I know and are considered friends, because it drives me to do this thing when I want to give up and be like, dude, this fucking sucks. Sending 60 fucking emails over the course of a year and almost a year and a half to get one fucking person on, but then you do it and you're like, God damn it, that's exactly why I fucking did it, because it was fucking rad, and holy shit. I feel like you go through that probably all the time with what you do. And so, I mean, I'm glad. Thank you for coming on and doing this again. And like I said, I know this is heavily nostalgia rap for both of us, but I just wanted to have you on and kind of do it again, because I always walk away feeling very motivated to keep doing stuff. So.
No, man. I mean, if what's the right words I want to use for this? If we all just gave up when a couple of people said no, you and I wouldn't be talking right now. You know what I mean? It's one of those things that it always sucks. There's nothing ever. Well, I can't say nothing. It usually doesn't go your way on the first go. You know, when I say you, I mean people in general. Yeah. And I can't stress enough that, I mean, I'm on, this February is my 14th year touring. And for some odd reason, I say odd because, you know, it's always over a course of time. For some odd reason, it's just going in the right direction. And if the world we knew goes in the right direction again, fucking awesome. So it's just, if you don't stop doing what it is that you want to do, but also growing while you're doing it, then you're probably, you know, your persistence will pay off. Is basically the name of the game, as far as I've been concerned.
So that was my interesting chat with Frank. You know, the time I did that podcast, you know, I've been wanting to have Frank on for a little bit. I think he is one of those people that has just been so motivating on a lot of levels, you know, between his clothing brand, you know, at that point, you know, kind of getting into an actual retail space and not just being an online store, with him getting his band back together, all the successes that he's had in his tour managing career and so forth as of late. I mean, shit, he just finished up the last couple of tours he did was JID, Andy Black, Black Veil Brides, like on his solo run. He then did, and that JID is like hip hop and basically sold out every fucking date of the tour. Then he went to the Andy Black tour, did an overseas tour, was on the Rockstar Disruptor tour for a little bit, and then basically did Pennywise, Rancid, went back to a JID Logic tour, which was playing in small arenas, and went back, finished a Pennywise Bronx tour, and you know, it's just he's ending his year with The World We Knew, and it's like the dude, you know, if you go back and listen to that first interview, which was one of the first interviews that ever happened on this podcast, you know, Frank is inspiring in spite of the fact that, you know, a lot of us in high school didn't know what we wanted to do, and, you know, we were just telling those stories in the intros about, you know, us being in bands and driving 10 plus hours to get paid nothing, and Frank did that, like, you know, in the beginning of his high school career and was like, that's what I want to do, and fucking quit school to go all in on himself. And that's just the kind of dude that he's always been since I've known him. And, you know, it's going to be really weird. You know, I know I mentioned it in the interview that I've never seen Frank, and I don't know Frank as being a vocalist or being the front man of a band, and I've never seen him perform. And so it'll be very interesting to see this different side of him, and basically the side of him that got him to how I know him now. I know that there are probably a lot of people that's not how they're going to see the show and not look at it, but I'm really interested to see this different side of somebody who I've long admired and respected for the career they've carved out.
Yeah, for sure. And, you know, just the history that he's had with this podcast too.
Yeah, he was, I think, the second guest we'd had.
Yep.
Which, as of when we're recording, last Saturday, as of when we're recording, would have been the day of that release. So 3 years ago, last Saturday.
Insane.
Yeah. This podcast is 3 years old, man. It's weird to kind of see that. And at that point, you and I had just wrapped up our 200th episode. So there was just a lot of nostalgia wrapped up in doing this chat. And, you know, it was funny because we went to end it and then ended up chatting for like another 30 more minutes. And I almost cut that out, but I was like, nah, fuck it. Like, keep that in. That's real. That's honest. That's sincere. That's the kind of friendship I think Frank and I have grown to have, where it's like you, and I hope people have people like that in their lives. Like, you know, it's funny, you know, we'll sit there and say sometimes on this show and even on discography discussion, like, man, John just is like always going. But then I look at what you're doing and you literally have like 7 or 8 podcasts. I'm like, dude, I may be very passionate and do this one. I don't know if I'd have enough to like come up with other ideas and content for 5 or 6 other shows.
Well, you know, it's not... Honestly, I'll have an idea and 5 minutes, and it's one of those, like, I just figure I'll just throw this out here and see how it goes, and then, we'll throw something out there, and then somebody will be like, oh, I like that. Are you guys going to do more of that? And it's like, yeah, I mean, I guess. So I think for me, I was only doing the one podcast when I met you, so, I think it was mainly, I think it was mainly, I gotta try to keep up. Like, I was kind of slacking at that time, and was like, man, I gotta start really stepping it up and doing a little bit more. And it's a little bit easier for me than it is for you too, because like you have, like, everything that you do relies on somebody else. At the very least, even like me, to come and do the intros and outros and sometimes interviews and stuff, whereas with me, I can just kind of sit down and just do it, because I don't necessarily have to have somebody there.
Right.
In order to do some of those podcasts. Like I just did like a 2-hour interview, like, by myself. Like I literally called the guy and was like, yeah, let's just do it right now. So I just try not to slack, man, because I can't have you outdoing me over there. It's
been a really weird week too. As when we're recording this, the Doc Coyle episode, which at this point will have been weeks old, man, that just surprisingly, I guess unsurprisingly, it seems like for as much as you and I sit there and like talk about a band and we're like, probably no one gives a fuck about this like we do, and then all the sites pick up on it, and you're like, and then you see hundreds of comments and it gets shared, maybe a couple hundred times and all this kind of stuff, and you're just like, fuck, man. Like, for Doc being like, oh, I don't know, people give a shit, and I kind of have low confidence that if we were to get back together and do a show, anyone would care. And it's like, we joked about the Opposite of December show that's happening and will probably sell out quickly. My Chemical Romance is coming back. Rage Against the Machine's coming back. Thursday came back. Like, all these The World We Knew is coming back. Like, so many bands are coming back. And I think, even with the World We Knew shows, like, they're playing small clubs, but I mean, I would dare say by the time the shows happen day of, like, both those shows will probably sell out. And it's one of those things that I don't think it matters, quote unquote, how big the band is. I think if the band was genuine enough and left an impact with people where, they still care, I think that's all that matters. And I think God Forbid was way too important to a lot of people for that band, if they were to decide to get back together and play a show. I don't see how that show is not going to sell out.
Yeah, I think it's going to be great. For as much as he wanted to be like, oh no, nobody cares. Like, dude, come on. I think he was just being, I don't know, polite. Yeah,
I don't know. I definitely am interested to see. I'm interested to see what reunions we get. I mean, there's so many records turning 10, 20, 25 years old and so forth. So at this point, I'm ready for all the nostalgia to come. At one point, it turns into a thing where you couldn't see the band on certain records anymore because you were, a struggling young 20-something, having to pay rent and bills and all that kind of stuff. And now we're in the prime of our lives where, hey, like maybe I can afford to go randomly to a place and go see a show because I have some extra money, or worst case, I have a credit card. I can go put that on and pay for future happiness down the road.
There you go.
All that being said, what are you drinking tonight?
Water.
Ooh. What kind? Are you cold, warm, lukewarm?
Cold tap water.
Okay.
It's hard water too, so I'm gonna probably die sooner than you.
I think I read this somewhere, but it is probably one of the most true things when you really think about it. You're like, holy fuck, that makes so much sense. And it was, whatever temperature water is, that's how it tastes.
I agree.
And I was like, and I started to be like, that's so fucking stupid. And then I thought about it and I was like, that's really profound. Like, because ice cold water tastes completely different than like room temperature water.
Totally.
But it's all the same thing. It's weird.
Yeah, I mean, unless it's got like minerals or something added into it, because like there's definitely like more like mineral based waters that I think actually have their own distinct taste regardless of temperature.
Yeah.
But then there's the reverse osmosis water we all drink out of water bottles that all basically has no taste at all. So yeah, all you can really taste is the temperature.
Yeah. Currently though, I am drinking some Bean Bastard coffee that I got. I have the Mom Blend. And it's pretty solid. I honestly, I'm not the biggest coffee fan. I think the only one I wasn't really super big into is the Robo Cup one that they had. But everything else I've had, I really enjoy. So I did see that my favorite blend is back. The shitter's full. Right after right after I bought all my coffee, they bring it back, and then they run a promotional code. If you buy 3 bags of coffee, you get a 4th for free. I wish I would have known that and waited like a week, because then I could have gotten my favorite blend, and I could have gotten it for free because I bought 3 bags of coffee. So,
right.
If you would like to pick up some delicious coffee, head over to the Bean Bastard. I'm actually burning my it's an espresso Bean Bastard soy wax candle right now, so I'm just all steeped and immersed in coffeeness over here. All of that being said, let's wrap up this episode. If you would like to keep up with Frank and The World We Knew, you can find The World We Knew on Facebook at The World We Knew, Instagram at TWWK Official, and they don't have a Twitter, so maybe by the time the show ends and all that shit, maybe they'll have one. If you would like to keep up with Frank, you can find him on Facebook under his name. Just simply look on the show notes and you'll see his name, or look on the screen. If you'd like to find him on Instagram, it is FrankTWWK, and Twitter is FG Fanelli. So bug him. He's a good follow on a lot of things. He posts interesting shit from his time on the road. You might see him out on the road with Amir once their new record drops and so forth. Usually that's one of the bands he's out with. Dude's always on the road. Go check him out. He loves boobs. He doesn't drink, so buy him all the Shirley Temples. But solid dude. I'm glad to have him back on the podcast. Can't wait to see him rip it up with his friends. And for Metal Nexus, if you'd like to keep up with them, metalnexus.net, Facebook, Metal Nexus, Instagram, metal.nexus, Twitter, metal_nexus. And Dan will tell you where he can be found.
I can be found on Facebook under Daniel Terry. I can be found on Twitter at DiscussMetalDan. And I think I can be found other places. Oh, yeah, I've got another podcast, or 20 or something like that, over at DiscussMetal.com. You can also send me an email at DiscussMetalDan@gmail.com, and I will probably respond to it.
And if you would like to keep up with all things this podcast, you can find us simply enough, Speak Pod, on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. Check out our YouTube channel. We have one of those. Sometimes there are videos. You can check those out, too. If you would like to support us monetarily, you can do such over at patreon.com/BrewSpeakPod. If you would like to support us non-monetarily, you can simply rate, review, subscribe. It's a thing that we always suggest you do. Some of you, I guess, have been doing it because we broke into the top 100 on Stitcher's podcasts charts.
Thank you for that.
Thank you for that. We broke into the top 100 on Australian iTunes charts, so thank you, Aussies. And actually got tagged on Instagram today from a person who was stoked that his favorite podcasts all had new episodes, and we were in with the Lamb Goat podcast, Justice podcast, and then it was us. So, I mean, that's pretty esteemed company to be a part of. I think some people are too kind and to say that we're, ranked right up there with some of those other podcasts, as those are podcasts that I think you and I actively listen to. So, it's weird to be considered among those.
I always think it's weird, man. I'm always like, are you sure? Like,
but it's one of those things. It's greatly appreciated. I'm definitely feeling the love all the way around. Like I said, this episode was kind of steeped in nostalgia, so all the support is greatly appreciated. Looking to end the year on a strong note, and every little bit helps. So thank you to anyone and everyone who has listened to this, shared this, whatever you do, continue to do that. We enjoy doing this podcast and bringing it to you every week. And for the Brewtally Speaking Podcast, I'm John.
And I am Dan.
We will talk to you all next time.